because an at-home tour or an illustrated talk is going to have no problems. But it'd be interesting to see how Facebook platform keeps up with the streaming as I'm walking around the streets, and that's what I'll be testing over the weekend. So what I'll do is, if it works, I'll be loading up from next week the first two or three tours. The first two or three tours in the new platform, and as Hago does, so it could work well. I'm definitely going to be carrying on, Kerry. Lots of people are trying lots of different platforms. I just want to get started as soon as I can in the new platform, rather than waiting for the consensus of what works best. So if Facebook Live works well, I'll be doing my first one on there next week at some point. Hi Connie, hi Tina, hi Robert, Joe, Maz and Bonnie. Good to see you all. Hi there Michelle, Karen and Cheryl. Thank you very much for joining me. We just got over a minute before I start this. Just to underline, if there's anyone who's not been on one of my at home or as live tours before, basically these are recorded videos of tour. The end of the tour, I'll flip the camera back round to look at me, and then we can do any Q&As or further comments from there. So thanks very much everyone. Let's turn around and make a start. Here we go. Let's see if I can get this to work. So this tour is about the so-called letters that supposedly come from Jack the Ripper, the Whitechapel murderer. There were hundreds and hundreds of letters, and I'll explain the details of how they arrived and where they were sent as we're going along. But because this is a particular area around Fleet Street in London, like the well-known journalist area for many years, I'll talk about that a bit more as we get onto Fleet Street in the tour. I think it's quite appropriate. There's lots of writers, lots of writing in this tour. So we're looking at famous English writers, we're looking at journalists, and where better to start than probably here in Gough Square, which is just north of Fleet Street, not far from Farringdon and Holborn. And this is the home of Dr. Johnson, Dr. Samuel Johnson, very famous English writer. Probably best known today as the writer of the Dictionary of the English Language. And he lived in this house in Gough Square, which was built in the end of the 17th century. Johnson lived in between 1748 and 1759. It's now Grade 1 listed. Won't be surprised, probably not only because of the link with Dr. Johnson, but certainly the fine build of the whole square. We'll see that when we back up in a moment. This is the house. It's now a museum, or you can enter that as on a tourist visit. If you're down towards the City of London way at any time, I definitely recommend a visit in there. Gough Square itself is very nice and really evocative of a much earlier era, really. Bizarrely though, I found that when I was here doing this tour, there's the entrance to the right where I just came in, and then there's a diagonal entrance which I'm going to be going out on. It's just like almost like a complete thoroughfare of people going through on skateboards and everything, and I wonder what Johnson would have made of that. But this is the house in Gough Square that Dr. Johnson wrote the Dictionary of the English Language. So very historic building there. I was really pleased when I did the tour live that people were recognised Johnson and his life, and asked me where his favourite cat Hodge was, and didn't expect him to still be alive after 250 years. But you'll see when I turn around in a moment. There's a memorial, not only the plaque there to Johnson, but behind me, I'll turn around in a second, you'll see a little statue for Hodge. Hi there, Trevor. Hi, Agatha, and everyone who's joined since we started. We're just a couple of minutes into the tour, so we're just looking at the house in Gough Square of Dr. Samuel Johnson, the famous English writer and compiler of the English Dictionary. And here comes Hodge. Lovely little statue. Hi Petrina. Hi there, Jen. Lovely little statue sitting on the book. Obviously, I can't see any writing on the spine, but maybe there is. But there's no doubt no doubt it is indicating the dictionary. And then there's his little oyster shell from the representing the oysters that Dr. Johnson used to give Hodge. Now, I think it's very nice, and there's a little thing on the side of the plaque. There's two plaques actually on this, on the face. Now I look down now, and it says the famous quote from Dr. Johnson. Here we are, it's Hodge, and then there's a little plaque. Very fine cat indeed. And then Johnson's famous quote: "When a man is tired of London, he's tired of life, for there is in London all that life can afford." Very interesting. I lived in London for many years and left. I did get tired of it, but it still draws you back. When you set foot off that train and get back into London, you feel like you're getting home. And then on this side, there's the talking statue plaque. Hopefully we can pause long enough. If you want to do a screen grab or a postcard of that, you may be able to or type that address, speak2.co/Hodge, and then there's a nice little talking Hodge for you to tune in on. Agatha Raisin's cats are named Hodge and Boswell. Yeah, I wonder where they come from, Patrina. But what I like about the statue is he's situated, he's positioned that he's just looking back at the house. I think it's really lovely. He's always keeping an eye out for Dr. Johnson to come out and give him another oyster. Now we're heading down towards Fleet Street. There's another very famous building, and with literary connections coming up before we get there. And this is obviously, you can see from the slabs and the bicycle racks and everything, this is more modern now. But this would have been, in Johnson's time, a little maze of courts and alleyways. Probably would have walked through here, but certainly not unaccompanied, I'd imagine. Although we're sort of quite close to the city and Holborn, it wouldn't have been the nicest part. And then we'll hear a story in a moment, another part of a street just a few yards away, or a few streets away, I should say, where some of the poorest inhabitants of London would come to. So not that far from Dr. Johnson. So as I say, probably wouldn't be strolling around on his own of a night time. Now this alleyway here is Wine Office Court, and it's a much longer court than the little bit we're going to walk down now. But some of you will probably know this pub, Ye Old Cheshire Cheese. It's Grade 2 listed now, this version of it. It was actually rebuilt following the Great Fire of London in 1666. Obviously, it would have been much older than that, but it was well known, the Cheshire Cheese, for literary connections. Dickens, for instance, was a regular here, and there's a plaque on the inside that mentions that he had a favourite table. Whether it's true or not, or whether it's just they're just playing on the Dickens story, I don't know. But just jump into 1962, looking at these upper floors. The pub was doing some renovation work in the upper floors, and they donated to the Museum of London a number of erotic tiles that had lined the walls of the upper room, one of the upper rooms in there. And it suggested that in the mid-18th century, the pub had a room being used as a brothel upstairs, which probably would have been the case given the location. But as I say, Dickens was a regular here, Mark Twain, G.K. Chesterton, lots and lots of well-known writers of the 19th century and earlier 20th century. Agatha Christie wrote in the Hercule Poirot book $1 Million Bond Robbery of 1924 that Poirot dined in the Cheshire Cheese, having a meeting with a client. So it's well known in with literary links. It's definitely worth a visit if you come along this way. It's got the very old. You can see, like, from the outside is the dark wood style, and it's the same on the inside. Lovely, a lovely place to stop and stay, and we'll have a quick look at the menu. We'll have a quick look in the menu when we get in there. It's just the rebuilt 1667. As a reminder that it was rebuilt after the Fire of London destroyed the original Cheshire Cheese. Now, obviously, Fleet Street that we're coming out onto now, being famous up to the 1980s, associated with newspaper journalists. Obviously, the pub itself, Dickens and Chesterton and Mark Twain gave way to the writers from the Sun and the News of the World, all those scrupulous reporters. I'm sure that they'd be in there, like, getting many a story And here we are looking from the front there, back up Wine Office Court. And what's quite interesting, along this little section of Fleet Street, there are little plaques on the floor there. This one mentions the magazine All the Year Round that obviously Dickens was the editor of, and it says there that he wrote much of All the Year Round while actually in the Cheshire Cheese. He was, as I said, he was such a regular in there. And then Cheshire Court running up the other side of the pub. I did walk up there to try and get a good video when I was testing the route, but it turns out it's just the back of the pub with nothing but a very noisy generator to encounter, unfortunately. Hi there, Natasha. Hi, Teresa and Trish. Thanks for joining me. And then just a little note here about the newspaper The Standard, which was first founded in the early 1800s in Cheshire Court. So again, just a reminder that we're looking at Fleet Street, the well-known centre of printing and publishing from the 16th century, actually. It would have been, in the early printing days, it would have been broadsheets, flyers and that sort of thing. And newspapers really sort of picked up from the late 17th, early 18th century areas. And the whole of the national newspapers had their headquarters here in Fleet Street. This building here was the headquarters of the Daily Telegraph. It's Peterborough Court, as we can see on the side there, but it's known as the Telegraph Building. It's an Art Deco style, as we can see from the clock, and we'll see from the fascia shortly. Hi there, Faith. And it was built in 1928, and it was really at the time where there was a big craze for Egyptian decoration and Art Deco was coming in. Those of you who were on my North London tour saw the cigarette factory, the Carrera cigarette factory, very similar style, and it's quite grand, really. When Telegraph moved out in the 1980s to go to Wapping, as the rest of the nationals did, this was between 1991 and 2019 the European headquarters of Goldman Sachs bankers, and I think now it's owned by the Qatari royal family, who that sign just said that I looked at, apparently restoring it to its original splendour. Be nice to go and have a look inside. Judging by the outside of the building, it'd be nice to see what the inside of the foyer is like. So let's carry on strolling along Fleet Street, and then we're going to turn off in a minute for an entirely different story. And you can see we're heading down towards St Paul's in the distance there, in the middle distance. Obviously, I've done a St Paul's Cathedral tour a couple of times now. I did it on the day I did this, actually, and it's just spectacular. But you can never get enough of looking at the architecture of St Paul's and more of Wren's churches. Certainly, as I said, following the Great Fire of London, Wren was tasked with rebuilding 51 churches in the City of London that had been destroyed in the Great Fire. And I don't think that they're going to be doing the same job in that building work over that side. But the reason for panning around there is to look up at the lovely clock on the side of the Telegraph Building there. Absolutely beautiful. And I wonder how many people walk along Fleet Street, drive along, don't even notice that up above their heads. 1920s timepiece, absolutely lovely bit of design. So zoom out, the clunky Hago chop zoom in. So going to be turning back round there, avoiding this horrible roadworks, and then heading up, taking the next left off of Fleet Street into, interestingly, a street you wouldn't think associated with Jack the Ripper victim, but this far away from Whitechapel and the East End, but most certainly is. And I'll explain all. This is obviously a very modern street now, but in the Victorian era, it was almost a infamous street. And I look up at the sign there. It's Shoe Lane. So EC4 Shoe Lane, and it was where the casual ward was situated. Really, almost the last of the last refuge if you didn't have any money for a lodging bed in the lodging house or anything like that. You'd come to the Shoe Lane casual ward, and you'd almost sleep in a box. There was no sort of comforts at all. It was just just a box. And Catherine Eddowes, victim of Jack the Ripper, she'd been in Kent with her common law husband John Kelly in the September of 1888. So she missed the early murders around Whitechapel, and they returned to London on the 28th of September 1888. John Kelly went to his usual, the usual lodging house. They went to Cooney's lodging house in Spitalfields. We'll hear more about that on Saturday. And Kate said, well, she'll go to the Shoe Lane casual ward. She'd been there before. And later on, the superintendent of the casual ward said, well, Kate was well known at Shoe Lane, but she hadn't been there for some time. So I think that she and John Kelly, he was a casual labourer. I think he'd got a bit of money. They'd go and pawn any items they had, and basically, like most of the East End, living day by day. As Tish said there, I think rope would have been cheaper than line in the box, and it certainly wouldn't have been like a cheap option. But the thing is, that was the nature. If lying in a wooden box or sleeping in a wooden box was the height of staying at the Shoe Lane casual ward, then that's what Kate did. And the following morning, she left Shoe Lane early than usual, went back to Whitechapel, where she met Kelly. That was her last day. They separated that afternoon. She went down to Bermondsey to see her daughter, try and get some money. He never saw her again, and she was arrested for being drunk, taken to the City of London police station at Bishopsgate, and she was released to meet her killer in Mitre Square. So this Shoe Lane, right at the end of the street there, we're only going to go halfway up, but right at the end was where Catherine Eddowes spent her last night, her first full night. And I wonder what she think, looking at this architecture here, I wonder she wouldn't recognise it, obviously, at all, this street. There's no Victorian buildings left at all. But so that is one Ripper victim linked with this area, and you'll hear when we get round to talk about the letters themselves in a minute. Absolutely staggering that it's only 100 yards from the place where I think Jack the Ripper was created. And then on this side of Shoe Lane, we're now looking at the Shoegrain Library. But this sits on the spot that's heavily linked with another Ripper victim. And here's a map of showing where we are. On the top right hand corner, there's a blue circle. That's where I'm standing now doing the video. And then looking across past the library to Gunpowder Alley, off of Gunpowder Alley, is a circled area called Dawes Court. Just 3 houses in Dawes Court. But this is where in August 1845, Mary Ann Walker was born. She was the second of 3 children, born to Edward Walker. He was a locksmith and later a blacksmith. And his wife Caroline, who was a laundress. So second of 3 children, and they grew up around here. Because of Fleet Street and the publishing industry, there were lots of people obviously employed in printing and publishing. Most of the young men in Whitechapel would be looking to do more casual labour, but in this area they'll be working in the printing industry. And Mary Ann met a printer's assistant named William Nichols. They married in January 1864. He was she was, as I said, she was 18. He was 20. Sorry, Penny. I think Shoe Lane is basically a corruption of another word, a more ancient word, which at the top of my knowledge is completely gone out of my head at the moment. I will make a comment on that at the end there. Hi everyone, has joined. We're walking back towards the Fleet Street from Shoe Lane because Mary Ann Walker married William Nichols, and very, very close to where she was born. Actually, she lived around here, and William Nichols was working nearby. And they married at St Bride's Church. It's still open now. We're going to go and pay a visit just on the other side of Fleet Street as we come out of Shoe Lane. Because of the locality of the reporters and the newspapers and the reporting, that it's known as the Journalists' Church, Reporters' Church. It's the one bit I was very lucky. We'll get there in a minute. I was very lucky to find it was open when I visited And not only that, they were playing some organ music at the time, and it just seemed right to to leave that on the audio. We'll hear that when we get over here in a minute. So just give you an idea, Mary Ann Nichols, as she was to become, grew up in this area where we are now. Again, she wouldn't have recognised it, same as Catherine, and married in the parish church of St Bride's on the other side of the road. We're going to go there now. It's good that we not heard the busy traffic noise from Fleet Street. It was pretty high volume on the day. Again, St Paul's is coming into view in the front, in the middle of the picture there. So we're going to cross over the road and up this little alleyway to the church where Mary Ann married William Nichols. And no doubt much happier, those of you who read The Five and histories about early lives of the Ripper victims will know that most of them actually didn't start their lives in Whitechapel or Spitalfields, certainly the East End, and they've made their way, they'd had happier starts to life. Most have been married with children, but for one reason or another ended up in the East End, struggling for life really on a day-by-day basis. But Mary Ann Nichols started her married life here at Offley Street. This is St Bride's Church with the famous wedding cake tiered spire there on the top there. Absolutely beautiful design again. Now this again was a medieval church, St Bride's, destroyed in the Great Fire of London of 1666, and it was another one of the 51 churches that Sir Christopher Wren rebuilt. Obviously we saw St Paul's Cathedral on that one. We look at St Marylebone, and many of the other churches on that tour. And in fact, I've been putting together a tour about visiting all 51 of those Wren churches, which I think could be really interesting, looking at the history and the architecture of those. But St Bride's here, as I said, was on 16th of January 1864. You can just imagine Mary Ann and William walking up this little pathway here to come and say their vows and start what no doubt they hope to be a happy wedded life. Now, when I did this tour live, as I say, I was chatting, doing the narration all the way along. When I go through the tour, when I go through the doors, I was silent because there was the organ music playing. There's you'll see in a minute. There's a absolutely evocative plaque, modern plaque, in the church to Polly's memory. Mary Ann was known as Polly Nichols, to her memory, and the other Whitechapel victims. So it's absolutely fantastic. I agree with you, Carol. The organ music was fantastic, and it really set the scene, didn't it, for looking at the plaque. So again, I'll stay silent now, and hopefully you can hear it through the volume on the laptop. Well, wasn't that lovely? And I thought so perfect for seeing the plaque there. But what a contrast seeing the inside of that church and how lovely it was. What a difference to how Polly ended in Whitechapel, looking down Bucks Row and all the streets that she obviously lived her final year. So this is the regional parish registers. This is the church register of the marriage. You can see William Nichols, Mary Ann Walker. Age, they didn't give their ages in. He was just either full age or underage. But so condition: bachelor, spinster. He was a printer, and you can see the names there. This is, as I said, this is a St Bride's register, accessible online. If anyone's on Ancestry, you can search this. But really lovely. Yeah, I agree, Kathy. It's got that look, feel to it, isn't it? That building. So I was very pleased, and to go see it. And again, more so that the plaque was put up. It was put up in 2020 on the inside of the church, and 2 years before that, there was a memorial service actually carried out in St Bride's on Polly's birthday in 2018. Now, one thing I promised when I did this tour the other week was that there's a website. St Bride's website has a video, I think, or at least an audio of that memorial. So the minute I finish this tour tonight, I'm going to go and find that, and I'll put a link up. So if you'd like to hear the 2018 memorial service to Polly Nichols on her birthday, then that's the link there. Now, unfortunately, Polly and William didn't last long. I mean, they married 16 years, had 5 children before they separated in September 1880, and don't want to go too much into the details, but Polly found herself making her way towards the East End, where she spent her last years in a lot of poverty, a lot of difficulties, and we'll hear more about that on my tour on Saturday when I do the ultimate Jack the Ripper tour. But again, just as we were making our way down onto the offices where I believe Jack the Ripper was created, I just want to look at this lovely old plaques on this, or the decor rather, on this building as we're going along. And again, these would have been courts and alleyways that probably Dickens knew and Dr. Johnson. It's interesting that I wonder whether Polly Nichols, growing up around Shoe Lane area off Fleet Street, would have been aware of Dr. Johnson's house. You know, it would have been celebrated. I'm sure that she'd have gone along and seen it, perhaps gone in the old Cheshire Cheese. It's just amazing that you think of the Jack the Ripper victims and you think of them just in the East End, but this is we've just been within 100 yards of each other, the site where Polly Nichols was born and married, and where Catherine Eddowes came to spend a night's sleep, the last full night of her life. It's just absolutely amazing that it's just underlines really that they did have lives, nothing completely separate from the Whitechapel murders of 1888. Now, going through this, this is a typical Victorian sort of office building. Then we're looking up at the back at these windows on the white building on the right hand side here. We're going to go out the alleyway and onto the New Bridge Street, as it's called, to look at the front. These offices are where Jack the Ripper was born, in my view, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Again, not the East End, not Whitechapel, not Spitalfields, but just off Fleet Street, Journalist Central. So Bride's Court. I'm going to come through there and then cross over the road and look up at this building that is a focal point of this of the rest of this story, really, with the letters supposedly from Jack the Ripper. And it'd be interesting to see if you share my view about the truth of those when I finish the tour in about 10-15 minutes. So crossing over, this is New Bridge Street, just around the corner from Fleet Street. And appropriately enough, there's a letterbox here. I'm going to go and stand behind the letterbox. It's not a Victorian one, unfortunately, because they could have had a good conspiracy theory about that. I'm now looking over at this building, the one that's immediately to the right of the brown brick, or the red brick. So the very skinny tall building with the narrow windows, 2 columns of windows. This was the offices of business called the Central News Agency, and it was a news distribution service like Reuters, Press Association, all those sort of companies. It's actually been founded in 1863 as a Central Press and renamed as Central News Agency in 1871. And what they did is, much as like Reuters today, they'd hunt down the story and then they'd basically send it out on syndicated news items around the newspapers that perhaps didn't have the journalists to go out and get the story themselves. They'd just buy the story from the Central News Agency. But Central News developed a penchant for sensational stories, because you'll know from other tours that I've done, at the time of the Jack the Ripper murders, there was several newspapers, cheaper papers such as the Star, had just been recently launched, and the Star was probably the first tabloid paper, and they gained a massive circulation, probably on the back of the Ripper story, because they published very lurid headlines. 27th September 1880, the Central News Agency received this letter. This is the envelope: The Boss, Central News Agency, London City. The postmark is London City, not far at all from the office. And it contained a letter called the Dear Boss letter, and it's signed yours truly, Jack the Ripper. And basically you can see some of the words above there. It says, my knife's nice and sharp and I want to get to work straight away. Mocking the police. Sign it, Jack the Ripper. This is the first time the name Jack the Ripper had been heard or been seen anywhere. It wasn't the first letter sent to the authorities or anyone, in fact, claiming to be from the murderer. Charles Warren, the Commissioner of the Met, had received a letter a week earlier at Scotland Yard. But the date of this letter was the 25th of September. The postmark was the 27th of September, same day it was received, at the Central News office here. Now, what's interesting is that the day it was received, the day before Catherine Eddowes went to the Shoe Lane Casual Ward. So 24 hours after Dear Boss, as the letter is known, which first credited the name Jack the Ripper, just 24 hours from Catherine Eddowes being 100 yards away around the corner. It's absolutely staggering, really. But Central News Agency apparently dismissed it as a hoax before they sent it to Scotland Yard on the 29th of September. It was a covering letter by an employee named Thomas Bulling. They dismissed it as a hoax, but of course, after Catherine and Elizabeth Stride were killed on the same night, they thought, well, we better send it to the police in case there's something in it. The police, looking for clues, they initially were sceptical about it being genuine, but they had no other clues to go on at that time. So they really made a misguided decision, in my view, to publish a facsimile of it. Here's a Metropolitan Police poster. And then a postcard was followed up shortly afterwards, a day or two later, called the Saucy Jackie postcard. It's in the same handwriting as Dear Boss. And you can see that the Met have published this poster asking for handwriting to be recognised. Go to the nearest police station. These do occasionally come up for sale. I've only seen one up for sale. You can imagine it's very expensive. There was a company that did a facsimile of this facsimile that was in a frame, and they were going for about £300. But the police had no clues to go on, and they made the biggest error perhaps in the case, in that they decided to publish the contents of that Dear Boss letter in the national newspaper. And a transcription appeared in the Daily Telegraph on the 1st of October. Again, we've seen Daily Telegraph offices not far away in Fleet Street. The whole facsimile appeared in the Evening News on the 4th of October. Now, the thing about that is, the minute that people started seeing someone claiming to be Jack the Ripper, claiming to be the killer, calling himself Jack the Ripper, had written in, everybody, every hoaxer, everyone having a bit of fun, wrote a letter signing it Jack the Ripper. Beware, I'll be in business, I'll be at work in the Minories. Beware, I'll be in Liverpool. Then it was just hundreds and hundreds of letters. And the problem is that the police had to follow up every single letter. They had to go and try and find out who'd written it, mostly to dismiss the letters as being genuine. Obviously, I don't think they believed any of them were genuine, but they still had to waste that time doing the work. And it makes me think about with Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper in the 70s and 80s. You may remember in the late 70s there was a cassette tape was sent to the police by someone claiming to be the Yorkshire Ripper, and they judged by his accent that he was from a certain part of England, and they dismissed Sutcliffe and everyone else who didn't sound like this tape. It was a hoaxer and completely wasting police time. And in that case, several women died because Sutcliffe wasn't arrested. Now, I'm not saying for a minute the police would have caught Jack the Ripper, or as we call him now, the Whitechapel murderer, because they were chasing letters, but hundreds and hundreds of letters. In fact, there were more than 500 letters sent that had to be investigated, not only to the Met, also to the city police. But who wrote that letter? And the thing is, why did that letter go to the one place it was going to be circulated in the newspapers rather than going to Scotland Yard or Whitechapel police station? It was written by journalists, I think, in my humble opinion. And he knew to send it to Central News Agency because it would get in the hands of all the newspapers. It had a postmark from the City of London. In fact, I wouldn't have been surprised had there been a letterbox where I'm standing now. It would actually be posted in that letterbox and then delivered to the Central News Agency. Now, in later years, Thomas Bulling, the man who'd written the covering letter, was named as the author of the Dear Boss letter by Chief Inspector Litterchild of Scotland Yard. A journalist named Fred Best has been named as a writer, and in fact, the manager of the Central News Agency, John Moore, has been named as a potential candidate for it. So I think it's. I think it's again such a massive waste of time. And nowadays, of course, anyone coming to the case new or watching a film, you know that the Ripper letters, where the police of sort of chasing around, can't catch anyone, and then they've got the letters taunting them. It's great television. It's great drama. But it was really, you can imagine how frustrated the police were, and I wonder whether the journalist who sent that in regretted what they'd done. Just that bit of fun. They probably should have just left it here at the Central News Agency and just burnt it, really. Anyway, it was deposited in the Public Record Office, Dear Boss, and by 1928 it was noticed that it had gone missing. It finally turned up in 1987. It was sent anonymously to Scotland Yard in a envelope with no address or no name attached to it. That letter, the 1987 envelope, was checked for fingerprints, dusted down, and if only they had that facility in 1888, they could have determined who wrote Dear Boss and completely saved all their wasted hours. I believe that the letter was taken from the police files by Chief Constable Melville Macnaughton, who was writing a report, and it was his grandson actually had it in India, framed on the wall. After it came back, I was at this is probably the highest scan I've seen of Dear Boss. I organised a conference in Bournemouth back in the year 2000, and we were very lucky, author Paul Beggar and me, that were organising the event. We were able to pull out all the stops, and we had good contacts at Scotland Yard Museum at the time, and they let us borrow this to go on display along with the shawl that we mentioned before. So I've held this letter. It's on put it in a display case at the conference. It's incredibly fragile. It doesn't look so bad there, but it's very, very faint. It's been enhanced on this scan. It's very, very faint. It's very small. It's folded in stupidly. It's been folded into 4 parts. So when it was opened up, parts sort of like crumbling away. You can't see it anymore. Just like much of the original police files, you can't see any of the original files. So many people have requested it over the years. It's all been microfilmed, and you can see digitisations of them. So yeah, Dear Boss is probably one of the most famous parts of the Ripper myth. But to me, that's exactly what it is. It's complete journalist invention that was a complete waste of police time. So there we are. I'm going to take any questions that you may have. I'll leave it up there for a minute if anyone wants to do a grab or a postcard of that letter. You'll never see a better version of it than that. I wish I could show you a picture of what it looks like now. You probably couldn't read the writing, but yeah, I mean, does this look like the man of a serial killer walking around Whitechapel? It doesn't, does it really? And in the letter, he said he tried to write. He says he tried to write using the blood of one of the women. I do, Debbie. Yeah, I'll post those on. I'll be posting those on my Hago post, and I'll also do a transcript, Carol. So you better read the full letter. It's just the language of a journalist, and he says, well, you can see the little bit there. He says, I keep on hearing the police have caught me. I've laughed when they say they're clever and said it's leather apron. I don't know, Natalie. I mean, Joel and I had this conversation previously when he did this tour, and I think we both agreed that he probably was illiterate, as you say. I got a feeling most serial killers do kill in the area where they are, and certainly Whitechapel, in Whitechapel in the East End, whoever he was, I certainly don't think he had handwriting like this. And the lovely dictionary thing. This is someone trying to be clever, and I think that Central News Agency sat on it for a couple of days before deciding whether to send it to the police. And obviously, once the police got it, then the Central News made a killing on the story. So there we are. I shan't quit. Oh, do you want to see that? I shan't quit, says Kathy. That's part of it. I'll do a full transcript when we finish in a moment, and I'll put the images up of the both front and back. It's a double-sided letter. There's a letter called From Hell, which is one of the few that's not signed by Jack the Ripper. It was sent to Dr. George Lusk rather, and it had supposedly had part of a kidney that was taken from Catherine Eddowes, which I think is probably, if there was one letter by the killer, that probably was the most likely. But again, I think that was a prank by medical students. Hi Penny. If I believe he was illiterate, he probably wouldn't. I don't know if you were on my North London tour where I looked at the house of Walter Sickert, the artist Walter Sickert, that's become a suspect in recent years. It turns out that some of the letterhead that he bought was used for Walter Sickert. Yeah, that's him, Sarah. Some of the paper that he apparently purchased for his personal use was used in a small number of letters sent to Scotland Yard, supposedly from Jack the Ripper. And I think that's one of Patricia Cornwall, who wrote probably the most famous book on Walter Sickert as the killer, claimed that made him the Whitechapel murderer. But of course, as we've heard, even if Walter Sickert wrote a letter signed Jack the Ripper to the police, it doesn't mean he was the killer. I think he probably got into the buzz of taunting the police and having a bit of fun at their expense as well. So that's my opinion on that. Too bad, Penny. I will be rerunning that at a later. I'll be running that at a later date. Probably be too late before Hago goes. Hi Debbie. Do I have an opinion on who Jack the Ripper really was? I do have an opinion. I do have an opinion on that. That's another tour that I do. So don't want to spoil it for you now. You have to hear me build up the case. Do follow me in the Facebook group. Hi Brad. Let me see what you've said. Brad, do I think the rule about the jewels was from the killer? Personally, I don't believe that was from the killer. Those who don't know, after the double murder of Catherine Eddowes and Liz Stride, a scrap of apron was found in a doorway in Goulston Street that was definitely part of an apron taken from Catherine Eddowes after she was killed in Mitre Square. If you're going to be on my Ultimate Ripper tour on Saturday, I'll be showing you the doorway that it was found. Now, above, that was found on the floor in the doorway to some some new apartments in in Whitechapel, or Spitalfields rather, that were occupied by Jewish families. And it was only when the police were searching those alleyways and the tenement buildings that the doorway, the message written on the doorway too, that they found this chalk writing on the doorway: "The Jews are the men who will not be blamed for nothing." Now, nobody knew it was there. As Joel says, the writing was in a neat schoolboy handwriting, quite low. It was only about 4 foot 6 off the floor, off the ground. Now, PC Long, who was walking on the beat, he said he's the one who discovered the cloth. He said he hadn't noticed the handwriting before, but when you see the dramatisation, such as the Michael Caine film, they make it appear as though it's like a massive scrawl on the wall. You couldn't miss it. If it was there, PC Long would have seen it. Well, in reality, it was only about 3/4 of an inch, I think, something like that. And he had no reason to be looking at, checking the walls for graffiti or anything. So, and the East End, then as now, was filled with graffiti. It was unusual to see chalk writing on the wall or anything. In my opinion, it purely is coincidence that the cloth was thrown on the floor by the killer after he left Mitre Square in that doorway, and it happened to be where the handwriting was on the wall. And again, even if it was written 24 hours earlier or 3 weeks earlier, blaming the Jews for anything, it could have been anything, because it was a Jewish residence population residency around that area. So I hear what you're saying. I mean, the word Jews was misspelt as Juwes, and it could alter the literacy of, perhaps, if it was the killer. I don't think that that's anything to do with the letters or from the killer, whereas the apron is the only clue that they ever left. Now, the original street art, says Kathy. I think that's one thing there, and it's actually, we'll see on Saturday, it's now a chip shop, and they've got a version of that wall writing put on the wall, in a frame on the wall, just sort of underlying where they are there. Let's see what else we have here. Loads of comments. Thanks very much for all your interesting comments here. Thanks, Penny, for your tip. That's very kind. And Gail and Linda. Thank you very much. Now, Facebook Debbie, I think someone's commented that. Hi, Cecilia. If you want to buy books written by me, the best thing to do is just go to adamwoodhistory.com, because on there you'll see details about my books, where you can order them. You'll see details about my tours, any events I'm speaking at. Everything's on adamwoodhistory.com. There is a new page on there, which is, if you would kindly like to leave me a tip after a tour. Obviously, Hago's disappearing. You'll be able to do it on that page and on that website, and it's adamwoodhistory.com/tipjar. I've also put up a buy me a coffee link on there, if you haven't got PayPal. But thank you for that. That's where you get the books. And as Anne says, if you order from me rather than Amazon or anything like that, then I'll sign and dedicate anything that is ordered through my website. So adamwoodhistory.com is probably the place to go. Thank you, Tammy, for sharing my Facebook link. And there's a Sunday Crime Club Friends group, which is where I hope to see you all to come along and we can carry on these conversations. I am in the group, and I do comment and answer any questions in there. And that's where I'm going to be doing my test on Facebook Live. My test on Facebook Live over the weekend. So if you are a member of that group, you'll see an event being created as to when I'm going to do that. And as many of you as possible can join on the tour would be fantastic, because then I can get your feedback, how you think it went, what you thought of the experience, because now, we're having fantastic chat and conversation. That's what I want to maintain. And we'll see if Facebook can do that. Thank you, Barbara. That's very kind of you. You just joined the Sunday Crime Club, but what happens if I want to do a tour on a Saturday? Kerry, that's the problem, isn't it? We have to think of an alternative. Thanks, Emily. Yeah, I think they're I think they're ideal gifts for any occasion, really. But my book on Swanson, who was the investigating officer from Scotland Yard in the Ripper case, is is a very big book, and that's more expensive. But most of them I try and keep to an economical paperback. They're just £10. And Debbie, yes, I do deliver overseas as well. So if you do place an order from the website, when you get to checkout, you'll get a little box that asks you to put a message. And if you just put please sign to Debbie or someone else, if it's a gift for someone, then please do, and I'll make sure I put that in the I'll put that in the book. The Crime Club. How do we join the Crime Club? There is a Facebook link which I think Tammy's just posted up. If you're in Facebook, there's a it's literally just, no, I can't see a link there. It's literally on Facebook. I think it's something like Adam's Sunday Crimes Club friends or something like that. Sorry, Anne, you never remember what you called it, but if you can put the link up again, people can click on that, and I hope to see as many of you there as possible. What I'm going to be doing for loyal Crime Club members is offering free PDFs of some of the cases that I talk about. I'll be doing private tours that will be just for members of that group rather than public tours. So although it's obviously free to join, but I just want to sort of encourage discussion of people that are interested in the historic crimes that I present. So there'll be these sort of little rewards and thank yous for all your comment and support. And thank you, Kerry, for your tip there. So and there's a YouTube one that Tammy's put in. You'll join. There could be a Saturday one. Hi Anthony, I've been testing Facebook Live today, and it seems to work very well. I'd imagine someone like Facebook have got enormous server space, and the streaming seems to be very, very robust. It's got the ability for me to do facing camera or facing the tour that I'm doing, both sides as well, and also I can read chat in the screen as I'm doing now, and also post links. So it seems to be quite good. I think there's going to be a couple of things. I don't think I can, there's not a facility for you to take postcards of an image, but you might be able to do a screenshot, which I've seen in other groups some people have been working with. Seems to be working well. Here we are. There's the group, Michelle. Thank you for sharing that. Hi Roxanne, the YouTube link is, my username is Adam's Crime Through Time. So it's youtube.com/@Adam's Crime Through Time. Next week, when I finish my final Haygo tour, I'm going to be uploading some of the videos that I've done on Haygo to YouTube. So by the end of next week, there probably should be about 8, 9 or 10 videos in full for you to watch. So at the moment, there's just one full video about the marginalia naming Jack the Ripper, and then there's a very short video showing the grave of one of the Ripper victims. But again, more coming up over the next week. Thank you again, Michelle. Perfect. Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate you paying a tip through PayPal there. That's great. Loads of links. I like it. The 40 Elephants, Brad. No, I haven't. You tell me more. Tell me more. I don't know about the 40 Elephants. That sounds intriguing. Hi Beverly. Paul did a trial Facebook tour and one of the group members from Haygoing group. That's good. Yeah, that was Joanne, wasn't it? I think I saw Joanne's post about taking grabs from the thing. I think it could work well. So we'll give that a try. I'm going to try doing a tour over the weekend. So as I say, keep an eye out for a Facebook event, letting you know when that will be. Female shoplifting gang, Brad. Do you know where they were based? Because that sounds, with the elephants, I wonder if it's South London. Unless I'm completely thinking of the wrong group. But it does ring a vague bell. The Elephant and Castle, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I actually lived around the Elephant and Castle for about 6 years, so you think I should have known about it, really. But yeah, no, that's definitely one I could look at because I know the area very well. I've done a walking tour book of Charlie Chaplin's London. You know, you may know that he grew up, before he became a huge star in America, he grew up in South London, around Elephant Castle. And that's the thing. I'm going to have to log off, guys, because I've got somebody knocking at the door. So thanks very much for joining me, and hopefully